Every day we write. Instagram, Twitter, comment sections, text messages and emails. We use keyboards, touchscreens, and sometimes we'll be wild and even use pen on paper. And every time we write, we're engaging in a process. We're taking ideas and thoughts that are in the form of language, and then recording them on a page using a system of lines and shapes that represent various sounds. And those sounds, when combined, create words. And these words, when arranged according to the rules of the language being used, create sentences that will, if we've followed the process correctly, communicate our intended information to the reader. It's a process that is so fundamental to our human society that by the time we're partway through our schooling, it has become an unconscious process. We use it so often that it becomes instinctual. So let's take a dive into the process that gave us this process we call writing. Somewhere between 4000 and 3000 BCE, humans took their first steps towards writing. It began with recording symbols on clay tablets to keep track of the numbers of livestock or commodities. And these first symbols used to communicate information were in the form of what we call pictographs. This means that the symbol that was carved into clay directly correlated to the object or concept being described. The pictograph for fish looked like a fish. The pictograph for arrow looked like an arrow. Now technically this was not yet considered writing as it was not associated with any language, but it was the first steps of the process. Over time, due to a number of potential factors, such as the need for greater efficiency, an expanding library of symbols, evolving writing technologies, or just plain old human laziness, these pictographs became more and more abstract, less resembling tiny pictures of the objects being described and more a series of lines or shapes that were understood to mean a particular object. And this was another important step towards writing, as we weren't just drawing tiny pictures of things, but were now creating symbols that were understood to have a meaning. But it still did not represent language. While this was happening, the next big step came with the recording of people's names. Now this is huge, because a person's name is not directly tied to an object. To record a person's name, you can't just draw a tiny picture of them, so we needed a way to recreate the sounds that made up a name. This was a huge leap forward because now we were thinking in terms of pictures to represent spoken sounds. Writing was becoming linked to spoken language instead of just physical objects. A simple example of how this began would be the modern English name Neil, which could be written with an image of legs kneeling. This image is now about the sound it represents, not the real-life action itself. And once we started thinking about writing in terms of symbols representing the vocal sounds of language, writing grew from there to be able to express anything we wanted to. Not just lists of objects or names, but our thoughts, our hopes for the future and the stories of our past. History rolled on, and as empires rose and fell and people migrated or invaded, some languages disappeared from use. Others evolved, assimilating symbols, words and sounds from other languages, until we end up where we are today. For example, the form of English this video is using right now is actually a mix of elements from Latin, Greek, French, German and Dutch languages throughout history, with the letter forms we use descended from the Latin alphabet, which itself incorporated letters from Greek and Germanic alphabets as the Roman Empire spread and the needs of the language evolved. So what does the history of writing teach us about process? It teaches us that we need to refine processes to suit our particular needs and technologies. The biggest leap towards true writing happened when we hit the limitation of not having a process for writing what we wanted to write. The process was no longer meeting the goal, and so the process needed to change. If a process doesn't evolve along with our culture and technologies, then it will cease to serve our goals. We need to keep what is working effectively towards the end goal and adapt what is not. It turns out that process, unsurprisingly, is an ongoing process. And next time, we'll look at how the evolving process of writing changed the process of what we use to write.